talk about an intergenerational struggle. What does it mean to center students, and what does it mean in this moment where we're coming back from the moment in which students were the lead of the movement for a moment, from Columbia to Stanford to Berkeley. We saw them take the lead nationally in a way that we haven't seen in decades. And now we're grappling with the question of what comes next for the student movement, what comes next for the youth formations, and what lessons can we learn from the past and from our history. So we're going to get started with our first question, which is, what is the role of the youth? And what is the role of the youth movement in the broader struggle for liberation?
Yeah, I can go ahead and get started. Youth have always played a critical role in moving forward the revolution. African youth, especially African students, are the mainstay of the African revolution as they bring energy, enthusiasm, and an unquenchable thirst for a future that provides them an opportunity to realize their dreams and aspirations. They know we know that capitalism, racism, Zionism, settler colonialism, and neocolonialism will never offer them anything except crumbs and death. So youth is especially important because, as we know, the prior generation, may not be experiencing and seeing the same things with the same energy that youth have. What we are experiencing as youth is we are going into the world seeing the conditions of what our fathers and our mothers had to go through. We have seen what is going on, and we're not falling for these reformist changes. Notably, what we have seen with the Pan-Africanism movement and with Zionism, we are not falling for any of these lies they are telling when it comes to Iran, when it comes to the reasons why they're attacking Palestine and committing genocide, and we are not going to stand for it. We know at this time, we can see how imperialism has wrecked the world, especially the African masses who have continuously been devastated by this. The African masses in Iran, the African masses in Sudan, the African masses in the Congo. And we know the only answer to this is radical movements. If you look at the 1960s, the Black Power movement, how they pushed by Kwame Ture under the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee called for Black Power. We said we're not going to do this support integration, we're going to support radical revolution. So the youth have always been at the forefront and have made a critical role in this. And I yield.
Thank you, that was really well said. So I would say that the role of the youth and students is multifaceted, but essentially encapsulated. We're just one of many fronts in a multi-front struggle. And if you look at Palestine specifically, the forefront of that struggle is the Palestinian resistance, but this is backed by layers of Palestinians who all contribute to supporting the resistance front, from doctors to intellectuals to civil workers, aid workers, etc. And for students, especially in the West, especially in America, we have a distinct front in targeting the university that we participate in and benefit from, and we must always depart from that understanding that the institutions that we attend and that we benefit from and that we give thousands of dollars of tuition money to, that those institutions are directly complicit in genocide and human rights violations around the world. And then I think what's also an interesting distinction is that in Palestine, the resistance struggle is dually faceted, where they are both building institutions and also disrupting the occupation. But I think here what we have to focus on more is disrupting more. That's what we need to focus on more, and building organizations that can disrupt, and disrupting within the organizations that we're already a part of. Because it is here that the military and financial chains begin, and it's here that genocide is normalized, it's here that the Israeli exceptionalism is granted, and so for that reason, that's why our role is essentially to disrupt.
So what is the role of youth and the youth movement in the broader struggle for liberation? And this is an important one, right? Because what we understand the struggle as is not just a single moment in history. The struggle isn't just today. The struggle has been. And the youth, in their most important role, they serve as a vehicle to take the lessons of the past to today. And it's not just lessons that we've learned, it's lessons we've fought for, that we've sacrificed for, that we've had martyrs for. And this is why our past and our history is so essential. This is why political study is so essential. And this is why youth movements have to be based in political education. Because the generation that came before us sacrificed for every single victory. They sacrificed even in every single setback that they had. And all of their sacrifices we cannot let be in vain. If we forget them, if we don't take them with us, if we don't study them, if we don't carry them in our hearts and every single action we do as organizers, then the sacrifice will be in vain. So the youth movements have a particular role. One is to carry the message forward. In Arabic, we have a word called deepen, which means basically accumulation of resistance. And we use this phrase to answer the question when people ask, we've had a genocide for 2 years. You guys have been in the streets every single day. What has it done? We haven't seen an end to genocide. Protesting every single day. Not just here in the diaspora, but back home. And people answer this question, and they fall into the trap of resentment. They fall into the trap of losing hope, losing faith, and losing their commitment to the struggle. But it's because of a misunderstanding of what struggle means. It's not because of wins in this moment that we commit ourselves. We commit ourselves because we know our cause is just. We commit ourselves because we know that eternal commitment to the movement will inevitably lead to victory, regardless of the setbacks that we face today. And as we move forward, we build upon what we built beforehand. We're effectively fighting a war of attrition. And that means we're fighting thousands and thousands of cadres that the enemy has built themselves. And in order to break down the brick wall of their castle, we have to chip away piece by piece by piece. And that doesn't just mean chip away. In our struggle, we have to chip away our own internal battle. Because the struggle is not just an external one. The most important struggle is almost internal. To strengthen our resolve, to strengthen our commitment and dedication as organizers, that every day dedicate ourselves to battle, and some days we feel like we're not winning. And knowing that regardless of the outcomes, we do it not just for us, but so the next generation can take our wins and continue forward. So that's why the youth have such an important role. They also have such an important role because the student youth movement, right now, their health, their strength, is a direct indicator of what's going to happen for the next 10, 20 years. How strong our students are today is an indication of how strong the entire movement will be for 20 years. Because all these students, what they learn in the academy doesn't end at the campus. These students have become ideologically committed to anti-imperialism. They saw the brutality of the university. They saw the brutality of the police breaking down their campus. They realized, dang, what I came here to do, this university that spewed so much rhetoric about being a place of learning, being a place about putting in practice these principles of social justice, had nothing to do with the actual practices. Because the second they took away their lessons and said, okay, you know what, we're learning about this, the university says put into practice, and they called down LAPD and all of their Zionist gangs to beat them and break down their encampments, they realize there's a fundamental contradiction at the university level. And I'm not just going to let it slide. I'm going to recommit to organizing, and I'm going to let this turn into just a temporary commitment to the movement, to an ideological and permanent one. So, in their response, they actually created stronger organizers. They thought they could break down the student movement. They thought they could break down the youth. And they just created people who were committed for their whole lives to the struggle. So, that's the next role of the youth and of the students, is to recommit themselves daily to the struggle. It's not just one day that we say, okay, in 10 years we remember the academies when they started at Columbia. No. It's now these organizers from campus joining organizations, organizing day and day and day again to build up campaigns and to make sure that the campus remains a space of highly politicized students. It's a space in which the next generation, for the first time, in many ways, become politicized and start to understand the importance of internationalism. And if we can continue to do that, the successes of the encampments, successes of the student movements that have come before us, such as SNCC, CORE, etc., they won't just be left in the past. There will be history that keeps on living itself through the commitment of these students and the commitment of youth formations across the world. So let's talk a little bit about this history. How have the legacy of student organizers such as SNCC, CORE, and the Third World Liberation Front impacted the youth movement today?
Looking at the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I think that going alongside what you was just saying, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee realized that these liberal politics waiting for these civil rights to come through was simply not the answer. We see that in 1967, after numerous attempts of trying to get rights to this way, seeing the way that protesters were treated, getting shot and killed on the streets, they realized that this way did not work. And one thing about the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee at this time was their connections to international politics. We have to think about the African liberation struggles that was going on at that time, the Vietnam War, and how these have played a critical role in radicalizing the youth and these student organizations. You have to think about work like Frantz Fanon's Wretched of the Earth. This is something that students carried in their back pockets, notably in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Why is this important to mention? The student Wretched of the Earth was seen as the revolutionary Bible at the time, as said by Malcolm X. This book called for us to do more radical things. It's called for us to see violence as something that is needed by the African masses and by revolutionaries across the world as something to liberate us from the brutality of colonialism. At this time, we really began to understand that we can never integrate with the white supremacist society. This is something that needs to be destroyed and torn down. And the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee and young revolutionaries at the time were at the forefront of this. It's important to understand the fact that we look to Guinea-Bissau, we look to Vietnam, we look to Mozambique for what they were doing and what the framework that they gave for how we can achieve our liberation. Looking at how they changed their organization is very important as well to really start to target the masses. And let them know really what's going on. I've got to talk about the importance of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party when it comes to reaching to students. That All-African People's Revolutionary Party's immediate task is to ideologically and organizationally develop Pan-African revolutionary socialist cadre, particularly African women and African youth who are capable and willing to politically educate and organize the masses of African people worldwide. So throughout the history of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party, we have been on campuses organizing, speaking to those on the campuses to help them understand what the primary contradiction is, which is capitalism and imperialism. So it's important. It has been the role of these student organizations really to help embody and to really move forward this radical surge, and also to help connect us to the struggles going on. Well, a lot of us may think within the belly of the beast, our conditions are isolated. These student organizations have quickly come to the realization that our struggle here is a global struggle. Our struggle here is connected to all the struggles across the world. You cannot separate the two. So I think even looking at the Black Panther Party, made up of a lot of college students as well, understand that they sent money to the Vietnam liberation fighters. Understanding that why we need to take on a more radical stance has also been the role of these organizations. And I know.
Yeah, that was really good. I don't know that much about SNCC, full disclosure. And that's definitely something I'm going to take upon myself to learn more about. But I can think, like, for example, like the encampments at Columbia, which the encampments at Columbia were like largely the example for the rest of the encampments across the U.S. They were reflective of like SDS and student Afro-American society encampments in the 70s against the invasion of Vietnam and also the gentrification of Harlem. And I think that part of our role, and like telling myself this first, but part of our role as well is to learn from those organizers and those movements and liberatory causes before us, because we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I think often when we think that we do need to reinvent the wheel, that comes from a place of ego. But there are people before us who like know so much more, did so much more, and there's so much to learn from them. And then I think also kind of a lack that I see these days within campus organizing is a connection to the political line on the ground and like a true articulation of that political line. I think the last time that we saw that within the Palestinian cause was with GUPS, and they used to recruit for the resistance in Palestine through GUPS, and like they actively participated within the PLO structure. In our current state, especially post 9/11, with like the over-criminalization of the Muslim community, that kind of level of involvement with on-the-ground work is just significantly more difficult.
We must continue to see the ways that the world is changing and understand the change that we play in this world. We play a role not only as the masses, but as revolutionaries. So if we're going to claim that word, we must live and embody it. We're not going to be a part of these organizations doing this work just for the fun of it. This is our lives that's on the line. This is the lives of millions of people across the globe that are continuing to die from the various aspects of colonialism, continuing to suffer. So we must understand that this is a really, truthfully, a life and death struggle that we're facing. This is something important that we need to continuously remind ourselves of, and then also we need to continuously be here for our other comrades. We have to understand that this is not done by ourselves. This is a collective action. So we need to understand not only the role for ourselves, but the roles that we play for those around us and our loved ones. That's my answer to that question.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think because after the extreme repression that we face from our universities after the encampments, something that we've thought about a lot within the SGP space is not necessarily how do we replicate the encampments, but how do we, I think you mentioned it earlier, prevent the encampments from being just a moment, but rather like a movement. So I think if we understand our role as targeting universities because they are ideological, material, and cultural reproduction sites for the empire, and they are financial hubs that render us forcibly complicit in this empire, then we also have to understand that we have a contradictory relationship with the university because, especially here, many of us and many of our families, we were forced to come to the U.S. due to the imperial empire's exploitation and destruction of our countries and our people and our livelihood, and then we come here and we're pipelined into jobs. This is much louder. We are pipelined into jobs that further that exploitation, and then our parents, children, so us, and then we attend these universities, and again we pay $900 in tuition, which is funneled into the endowment or the system that actively funds genocide. And the university itself serves as a recruiting arm of the military-industrial complex, a huge arm of that. These contradictions have to be understood and they have to be sharpened, and I think that's one of our largest goals. And we have to research and understand the systems that we're a part of. We have to, like you mentioned, commit to the resolve it takes to successfully achieve our strategic goals. A huge part of the lack of momentum right now is a lack of understanding in political education. I think after the encampments, people perceive divestment as a failure, and they maybe even perceive the encampments as a failure because divestment wasn't really achieved. A lot of universities, student government associations passed divestment resolutions and they proved to be essentially symbolic. I'm always wary of calling any movement a failure because I believe the fact that it happened was a success, regardless of whether our strategic goals were achieved or not. But I think a broader understanding of what divestment is within the university system will increase people's resolve. We have to understand that the way that the system is currently set up, especially in this neoliberal post-Reagan era, where universities essentially act as investment portfolios and landlords, and our boards of trustees are led by members of the ruling class. To give example for Maryland, because we're in Maryland, especially Baltimore. We have the University System of Maryland, and there's the Board of Trustees that manages the endowment. It's an over $2 billion endowment. Is run by Linda Gooden. She is a ex-Lockheed Martin vice president. And then another person who's on the financial committee, the finance committee, his name is Steven Sabell, and he runs one of the largest real estate gentrifiers in Baltimore. These are not coincidences. These people never attended USM institutions. They don't know anything about education. But we know that basically, essentially, the endowment is so deeply, and the university is so deeply entrenched within the empire that it's going to take a dissolution of the board and the system as we know it to actually achieve true divestment. And that's not easy. And I think a lot of people are they romanticize the encampments. It was not easy, but it was kind of fun. It was hundreds of people all together, sleeping in tents together or whatever, and now people are take me back to the encampments, take me back to those days. But it's not supposed to be easy. Our work isn't going to be easy. The liberation of Palestine isn't easy, and divestment and the liberation of Palestine and all these other struggles, liberation are going to happen in tandem, and we have to have revolutionary optimism. I think another point, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but another point that I have is I think the words that we say also have to mean something, especially as university students, again, paying thousands of dollars and experiencing a privilege that a lot of people in America don't have. A lot of times we intellectualize the struggle. And it's almost like this experiment that we're participating in for the 4 years that we're a student, and that we're not actually going to participate in outside of the university structure, which isn't genuine. So when we say things like the people of Gaza are a compass, or that the resistance guides us, the people in Gaza resist because they have to. They don't get to dictate the level of sacrifice that they have to make. They have literally no choice. And oftentimes we are choosing. We're I don't want to get a student conduct charge. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get kicked out of my graduation. Things like that. We can have an understanding that we are victimized by the system to an extent, that our parents were victimized by the system, that we are exploited, that we are pipelined, that wanting a job and wanting to make money and wanting to raise a family here or whatever it is are normal desires, but that because we're here, it requires participation in a system that exploits us and the global community. That's just the facts. And so I think something as students that we have to seriously question is how much are we subscribing to the replication of the class structure that our university set up by punishing dissent and rewarding being a good student. There is no level of consequence that we can face in our university that is more than what the people on the ground are facing. And so we need to be genuinely okay with being forced to pivot or dealing with student conduct charges or suspension or whatever. Another thing, that I want to mention is we always talk about none of us are free until all of us are free. Our struggle is one struggle. That also has to mean something. Again, a lot of students only organize within their university. And not only are they only organizing within the university, but they're only organizing within the current student body population within the university. The students are leaving after 4 years. The staff and faculty, those are people that are staying. So we have to involve the staff and faculty unions in our work. And in addition to that, we have to involve the broader community, especially since our institutions are actively gentrifying the community. And then I want to give 2 examples within Baltimore. UMB right now, there's a proposal, already UMB is a gentrifier, but there's a proposal to build a $300 million college town within Baltimore. That's gentrification. Coppin also has a proposal to build a $300 million, again, police academy within the university. So this is just it's our role to mobilize against these things, to educate our university population about these links, and to engage with our community, because our movement is not going to be sustainable at all if we isolate ourselves from the broader struggle, which is what they intend.
Not only as the masses, but as revolutionaries. So we're going to claim that word, we must live and embody it. We're not going to be a part of these organizations doing this work just for the fun of it. This is our lives that's on the line. This is the lives of millions of people across the globe that are continuing to die from the various aspects of colonialism, continuing to suffer. So we must understand that this is a really, truthfully, a life and death struggle that we're facing. This is something important that we need to continuously remind ourselves of, and then also we need to continuously be here for our other comrades. We have to understand that this is not done by ourselves. This is a collective action. So we need to understand not only the role for ourselves, but the roles that we play for those around us and our loved ones. That's my answer to that question.
I have a lot of thoughts. I think because after the extreme repression that we face from our universities after the encampments, something that we've thought about a lot within the SGP space is not necessarily how do we replicate the encampments, but how do we, I think you mentioned it earlier, prevent the encampments from being just a moment, but rather a movement. So I think if we understand our role as targeting universities because they are ideological, material, and cultural reproduction sites for the empire, and they are financial hubs that render us forcibly complicit in this empire, then we also have to understand that we have a contradictory relationship with the university because especially here, many of us and many of our families, we were forced to come to the U.S. due to the imperial empire's exploitation and destruction of our countries and our people and our livelihood, and then we come here and we're pipelined into jobs. This is much louder. We are pipelined into jobs that further that exploitation, and then our parents, children, so us, and then we attend these universities, and again we pay $900 in tuition, which is funneled into the endowment or the system that actively funds genocide. And the university itself serves as a recruiting arm of the military-industrial complex, a huge arm of that. These contradictions have to be understood and they have to be sharpened, and I think that's one of our largest goals. And we have to research and understand the systems that we're a part of. We have to, like you mentioned, commit to the resolve it takes to successfully achieve our strategic goals. A huge part of the lack of momentum right now is a lack of understanding in political education. I think after the encampments, people perceive divestment as a failure, and they maybe even perceive the encampments as a failure because divestment wasn't really achieved. A lot of universities, student government associations pass divestment resolutions and they prove to be essentially symbolic. I'm always wary of calling any movement a failure because I believe the fact that it happened was a success. Regardless of whether our strategic goals were achieved or not. But I think a broader understanding of what divestment is within the university system will increase people's resolve. We have to understand that the way that the system is currently set up, especially in this neoliberal post-Reagan era, where universities essentially act as investment portfolios and landlords, and our boards of trustees are led by members of the ruling class. To give example for Maryland, because we're in Maryland, especially Baltimore. We have the University System of Maryland, and there's the board of trustees that manages the endowment. It's an over $2 billion endowment. Is run by Linda Gooden. She is a ex-Lockheed Martin vice president. And then another person who's on the financial committee, the finance committee, his name is Steven Sabel, and he runs one of the largest real estate gentrifiers in Baltimore. These are not coincidences. These people never attended USM institutions. They don't know anything about education. But we know that basically, essentially, the endowment is so deeply, and the university is so deeply entrenched within the empire that it's going to take a dissolution of the board and the system as we know it to actually achieve true divestment. And that's not easy. And I think a lot of people are they romanticize the encampments. It was not easy, but it was kind of fun. It was hundreds of people all together, sleeping in tents together or whatever, and now people are oh, take me back to the encampments, take me back to those days. But it's not supposed to be easy. Our work isn't going to be easy. The liberation of Palestine isn't easy. And divestment and the liberation of Palestine and all these other struggles, liberation are going to happen in tandem, and we have to have revolutionary optimism. I think another point, sorry, I know I'm rambling, but another point that I have is I think the words that we say also have to mean something, especially as university students, again, paying thousands of dollars and experiencing a privilege that a lot of people in America don't have. A lot of times we intellectualize the struggle. And it's almost like this experiment that we're participating in for the 4 years that we're a student, and that we're not actually going to participate in outside of the university structure. which isn't genuine. So like when we say things like the people of Gaza are a compass, or that the resistance guides us, the people in Gaza resist because they have to. They don't get to dictate the level of sacrifice that they have to make. They have literally no choice. And oftentimes we are choosing. We're like, oh, I don't want to get a student conduct charge. I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to get kicked out of my graduation. Things like that. We can have an understanding that we are victimized by the system to an extent, that our parents were victimized by the system, that we are exploited, that we are pipelined, that wanting a job and wanting to make money and wanting to raise a family here or whatever it is are normal desires, but that because we're here, it requires participation in a system that exploits us and the global community. That's just the facts. And so I think something as students that we have to seriously question is how much are we subscribing to the replication of the class structure that our university set up by punishing dissent and rewarding being a good student. There is no level of consequence that we can face in our university that is more than what the people on the ground are facing. And so we need to be genuinely okay with being forced to pivot or dealing with student conduct charges or suspension or whatever. Another thing, that I want to mention is we always talk about none of us are free until all of us are free. Our struggle is one struggle. That also has to mean something. Again, like a lot of students only organize within their university. And not only are they only organizing within the university, but they're only organizing within the current student body population within the university. The students are leaving after 4 years. The staff and faculty, those are people that are staying. So we have to involve the staff and faculty unions in our work. And in addition to that, we have to involve the broader community, especially since our institutions are actively gentrifying the community. And then I want to give 2 examples within Baltimore. UMB right now, there's a proposal, already UMB is a gentrifier, but there's a proposal to build a $300 million college town within Baltimore. That's gentrification. Coppin also has a proposal to build a $300 million, again, police academy within the university. So this is just it's our role to mobilize against these things, to educate our university population about these links, and to engage with our community, because our movement is not going to be sustainable at all if we isolate ourselves from the broader struggle, which is what they intend.
So yeah, we need to be speaking up. We need to be loud. We need to use our energy to let people know. And I yield there.
So for me, the simple answer: if students want to revolutionize media, they have to organize. And I'll give a story to back up my answer. Let's look at the Cuban Revolution, for example. What did the Cuban Revolution start with? It started with a major setback. The attacks on the barracks of Moncada. In 1953, around 140 Cuban revolutionaries, which were all they were at the time, decided to take on one of the most brutal dictatorships the island had faced, the dictatorship of Batista. So 140 of these organizers, led by Fidel Castro, Eddie Moncada, and a few of their comrades, decided to wage a surprise attack on these barracks of strategic importance to the dictatorship. If they fell, they would be successful in waging from the heart of Cuba a revolution that would take over the entire island. If they failed, they would lose the few organizers they had, and the revolution they thought may be lost. So they organized, they hid for months, moving between apartment and apartment, gathering supplies, weapons, and finally in 1953 decided to surprise attack. But one of the soldiers had spotted them. And in that first wave of attacks, a majority of them were caught, many of them were martyred, and most of them were arrested. The surprise attack, the beginning phase of the revolution, failed, and Fidel Castro was arrested. Eddie Moncada's brother was tortured and martyred, and they thought, is this the end of the revolution? But what happened is Batista's government decided to put them on trial. They said, Fidel Castro, we're going to condemn you to, life in imprisonment. The rest of you all will be tortured and sent away for as long as you can. Fidel Castro, who had been trained as a lawyer, said, maybe you will try to put me in prison, but what I have left is this trial, in which I will speak truth not only to Batista, But I will lay down the basis of our revolution in my defense against myself. Because the defense wasn't just a defense as for them. The defense was the defense of the revolution. That defense, his 3.5 hours speaking before the court was recorded. We now know it as History Will Absolve Me, which became the very basis of the Cuban Revolution. And he had one order to his comrades, was to record every word I said, copy 100,000 copies of this, and spread it across the entire island. They weren't able to make 100,000 copies, they only had 30,000 to make, but this became the ideological basis for the Cuban Revolution, and their setback, their trial, became the very beginnings of the revolution, and ultimately led to their triumph within a very short amount of time. So our role in the media, even if we don't have a media that's supportive, even if our media is controlled by the imperialists, is to organize, and through a revolutionary activity, the media will be able to adapt themselves to us, and we will be able to revolutionize the propaganda and media we put out. But the basis and our very primary role is to continue to organize and use our own propaganda to spread the campaigns and the movement work we engage in.
Hi, my name is Medium. Thank you so much. It was a really great discussion panel. My question is regarding students and how to get them to engage on my campus. I go to Zaytuna College in the Bay Area, and we are currently trying to get Zaytuna to get involved, or I am, because I'm the only Palestinian student currently, but I'm trying to get them involved in the Oakland arms embargo. And a lot of the issues that my college and then UC Berkeley, Stanford, the SFSC Dubs, a lot of us have been having is we have students in our schools and who are part of the SJP who support Palestine, but they follow the thought process of, like getting my engineering degree is going to help us more. Like protecting my degree is not putting myself on the front lines of like blocking the docks is more helpful than like being arrested or putting my degree in jeopardy. So what would you guys have to say in response to that?
Can I respond? So nice to meet you. I organized in the Bay Area for 9 years, and I was very involved in the student movement. So we actually have a coalition in the Bay Area called the NorCal SJP, NorCal SJP Network, and it's a coalition of all the different SJPs from San Jose State University, UC Berkeley, UC Davis, GUPS at SFSU, USF, etc., etc., etc. So if you're interested in organizing with them, we already have existing structures to take in new student organizers who can not only learn from NSJP, PYM, the organizations that are in place, but be connected to the other campuses and student organizers that exist right now who are ready and willing to support you. So if you'd like, I can connect you to those organizers.
Did you mean like at Zaytuna specifically though? This discussion was going on in a breakout session for the student sector of the Oakland arms embargo, but this is just how the conversation came up. And we were saying a consistent issue is that a lot of students feel like, even Palestinian students or Arab Muslim students who are connected to the movement, feel like protecting their degree would be more beneficial to the cause than to put their degree in jeopardy. Kind of like what you were saying is that like we can choose how like the risk factor, but like people in Palestine can't. So I don't know how to get that across.
It's definitely difficult. I think that is a response to the depoliticization of the Muslim community because of the repression we faced from the U.S. After 9/11. So I think Muslims now are very, very like scared to, do anything that places pressure on the empire, that resists in any way, because we were constantly labeled as like terrorists or barbarians or whatever. And like all Muslims like have a story of like a family or family friend member like in the U.S. like just being thrown in jail for like literally no reason. Like especially during that time, and then that generation raised us, and so they raised us to be fearful. So I think really it's on us to like show people that it's like that there's really nothing to be afraid of. Like I tell people all the time, like I don't care if I get suspended, I don't care if I get expelled, like I don't care. We have to stop placing so much emphasis like on this system, because when we place emphasis on the system, that's what's reinforcing it. And I also like I would question, like, I would say, like, appeal to who you're speaking to. So these are Muslim students at Zaytuna, like, appeal to them of like, the Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a revolutionary. He did not compromise. He had red lines, and that was it. And, like, we should embody red lines, too. Like, we should all embody the thought that there's no excuse for us not to. And, like, whatever it takes to embody that is whatever we have to do. I think it comes through constant conversation, and I think it comes through example as well. Like, there are students here in the DMV who like dealt with horrible backlash by like the federal government, and like I've talked to them and they're like, bro, I'm fine. Like I'm chilling. I've got like one of them is gonna go to a really great school, another one just transferred to a different school. They're gonna get their degrees, like they're gonna be fine. And I think it's important to like tell people that, because it's understandable where the fear comes from. And I don't want to diminish that, but I think it's important to appeal and have conversations and not really come from a place of judgment. I know it's hard. I was on the Muslim Student Association at the same time that I was on Students for Justice in Palestine, and it was very hard. But that's why I did it, though. I was like, oh, you guys won't let me mention Palestine, so I'll become president of MSA. Like, that's really that's the resolution. Like, join the spaces, like make friendships with the people that you're having difficulty with, and I really think that will take things a long way.
I know that's Milan.
And on June 20th, our town hall, we're actually going to be having another discussion about youth. So it'll be organizing for collective power, youth commitment to struggle. And so I would love to have this conversation continue, and we can continue to discuss how we look at power, how we struggle for power, and how we liberate ourselves, and how our youth take charge in doing that as well. So just to plug, it'll be here at the same church, June 20th, 1-3. Thank you.
Before we close out, we just want to share some of our campaigns. In addition to being a member of our African People's Revolutionary Party, I'm a member of the Black Alliance of Peace, but at our African People's Revolutionary Party, the struggle, we speak on Smash Zionism because we understand that Zionism is a global threat, not only to Palestinians, but to African peoples across the globe. So the AAPRP is anti-Zionist. We will remain so until Zionism is smashed. And we uncompromisingly and unconditionally support the Palestinian people. The struggle against Zionism and our support for the Palestinian people must be waged on all fronts. The AAPRP places primary importance on the ideological front. So that's important to understand when it comes to AAPRP. I just want to share that. And for the Black Alliance of Peace, we understand that through our campaign of U.S. out of Africa and shut down AFRICOM, that the U.S. on the African continent is one of the utmost threats to our sovereignty as well. We have seen just recently, on April 25th, 2026, Mali faced major attacks by imperialist backed terrorists. If you go to our website on Black Alliance of Peace, you can check that out. And alongside that, we understand that this global system of militarization is a threat to Africans at home and abroad. We see this in Baltimore City with the militarization of our police through things such as the 1033 program, which brings free and reduced military equipment to our police. the deadly exchange program in which Baltimore City Police train with Israeli police, bringing tactics home. Just as the comrade mentioned, the $330 million police facility that they're building on Copper State University, and $1 million being brought in federally. So at Baltimore, we have our petition to demilitarize Baltimore and target these policies. So and check us out on our Instagram at @_Baltimore. Or before y'all leave, please scan our petition. Thank you.
Quick shout out to USM Divest Coalition. We're a new coalition. We've had some pretty good wins lately. We passed divestment at the student council system level, which is the student council that represents the entire system, which is the first time it's been done in the U.S. So that was pretty huge. And what that means is that at the next Board of Regents meeting, instead of me getting up there and really telling them that they have to divest and then move on, an official channel is going to present divestment the student council is, and that's going to be on June 12th, and that's going to be at the University of Baltimore, so DMV, not UNBC. And we're going to go and we're going to protest. We're going to try and take the streets, inshallah. So yeah, all USM divest, and connect with me, please. Anybody, everybody.
Cool. Thank you, Prescence. All right, Prescence DOM is pretty simple. Our campaign right now is the Virginia Retirement Systems Campaign. If y'all haven't heard about it, Virginia is investing in hundreds of billions of dollars into weapons manufacturing companies. And our question is, what the hell is a pension fund doing investing in the people who are making bombs and the components of bombs? So, easy as for all y'all, go to vrs.divest.org, vrs.divest.org, and sign our petition. Even if you're not from Virginia, what it does is it sends an email on their behalf to all the board members asking them, what are y'all doing investing in these evil genocidal companies? And making a real ask for them to divest. And it's a winnable campaign. We've seen it done in other regions, and we know that we can do it here too. Thank you.
Thank you. In the interest of time, I do develop a yes or no question. I hope. Would it be correct if I concluded that the primary contribution of our youth is to push forward or prioritize activism such as marches, protests, and demonstrations, and boycotts, and things of that nature? So, I hope yes, no. Thank you.
I would say yes, and right? Like yes, that is an important part of it, but more importantly, our fundamental role is an ideological struggle against imperialism, right? And every march, every action, every protest serves that ideological struggle.
We proud to push forward the revolution.
But yes, I think it was Muhammad al-Kurd who said that he thinks that a true uprising against Zionism is going to be rooted in an ideological understanding of what Zionism and imperialism is. And that, yeah, so yes, and.
We had his